All right. I'm Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at our agenda for this evening. So, as usual, we are going to follow our normal format tonight. We're going to start with some announcements, then we'll do the recommended reading, followed by the quote of the day. We'll do some introductions and victories. We're going to do review part one, take a break at about 8:30, come back and work on the second part of the review. Tonight we're reviewing chapter 7, the first part of chapter 7. There will be another workshop next week so we can complete chapter 7, do some Q&A, and wrap everything up by 9 o'clock. I'm reminded that today's workshop is being recorded and will be available on the BeBiggerToday.com website and YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Please feel free to stop your video and mute your microphone if you do not wish to be seen or heard on the recording. Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, second edition, author signed paperback is now available. It's on sale for only $21.95. You can get your copy at BeBiggerToday.com/book. And while you're there, check out my New York City photo book, New York Cityscapes. This is a collaboration between myself and 6 other New York City area photographers. We each have our own unique take on the Big Apple and the landmarks and skyline that makes New York City so great. So check it out at BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore, still on sale for $16.95. And we also have merch, some hats and t-shirts. Save 20% using discount code MERCH20 at checkout at BeBiggerToday.com/merch. You can also see my original art and photography on my website at BeBiggerToday.com/art-photography. These are my original landscape, cityscape, and abstract images. And here's our commercial for tonight. Peter's photos and abstract designs are uniquely beautiful, one-of-a-kind works of art. These gallery-wrapped canvas prints are set in a contemporary shadow box floating frame and will enhance the beauty of any home or office. Available in 4 different sizes, each piece is professionally framed and comes complete and ready to hang. Frames are available in your choice of black, white, or brown, and each is signed by the artist. Peter's original art and photography will make a great gift for a client, for yourself, or someone you love. Order yours today. And moving right along, we have refrigerator magnets. These are my original one-of-a-kind New York City photos on refrigerator magnets. You can get 1, 3, or all 11 for only $25 at my website, BeBiggerToday.com/merch. No home or office should be without these. My most recent interview was a TV interview I did with America Trends, Mary Burt Godwin. This is available on YouTube. If you go to my website, BeBiggerToday.com, look for this photo on the homepage, click on that, and it will take you directly to the interview. It's about 15 minutes long, so check it out. Also, want to let you guys know that on September 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern, I will be doing a webinar for TV Guestpert. You guys are all invited. It's open to anyone who would like to attend. Go to my website at BeBiggerToday.com, look for this photo, click on this photo, and it will take you to the registration for the webinar. It is free to attend, and it's open to anybody who would like to join us. Again, it's at 3 p.m., 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, September 2nd. And I am available for one-on-one coaching and or corporate consulting. So if you're a creative person, if you're a writer, photographer, an artist, or if you have a company or work for a company and would like me to come in and speak to your sales team or your management team on how they can be bigger than they think they are, reach out to me through the website at BeBiggerToday.com and we'll set that up. And I am accepting donations, but in lieu of direct donations to support the workshop, I suggest purchasing a copy of the second edition of my book. You can get yours on Amazon or from my website at bebiggertoday.com/book. And if you like the book, please tell your friends and leave a positive 5-star review on Amazon. Thanks so much for your support. All right, so as I said, we're going to follow our normal format tonight. So I'm going to start with a recommended reading. Now, this is a book that I recommended way back, probably the second or third night of the workshop last year. The book is Codependence Anonymous, otherwise known as the Coda Big Book. This book is kind of the foundational literature of the Codependence Anonymous program, 12-step program. And you know, this book and the program, I can honestly say that the CODA program saved my life. And when I got in, this was my first 12-step program, and this was back in it's about 24 years ago, 23, 24 years ago. And for anybody who has issues with relationships, whether with other people or with yourself, you know, I found it very helpful. And on top of that, like every 12-step program, there's a great community. We learn to have relationships with our fellows and practice the principles of the program. And so I really recommend this book. You don't have to be in CODA to get benefit from it. A lot of great information about relationship issues, self-esteem, you know, stuff that we talk about, learning to love ourselves, and then also you know, integrating a higher power, the concept of a higher power into our lives. So you can pick this book up on the coda.org website. There's also a lot of great information there for anybody who might be curious about what codependency is and all of that. You can also get a copy on Amazon and pretty much any place else where they sell books. And what I wanted to do was share with you guys the 12 promises of Codependence Anonymous. So most 12-step programs have 12 steps, 12 traditions, and then they also often have 12 promises. And I have to say, the first time I heard these promises, you know, it really touched my heart. And so I want to share them with you tonight real quick. I can expect a miraculous change in my life by working the program of Codependence Anonymous. As I make an honest effort to work the 12 steps and follow the 12 traditions, 1, I know a new sense of belonging. The feeling of emptiness and loneliness will disappear. 2, I am no longer controlled by my fears. I overcome my fears and act with courage, integrity, and dignity. 3, I know a new freedom. 4, I release myself from worry, guilt, and regret about my past and present. I'm aware enough not to repeat it. 5, I know a new love and acceptance of myself and others. I feel genuinely lovable, loving, and loved. 6, I learned to see myself as equal to others. My new and renewed relationships are all with equal partners. 7, I'm capable of developing and maintaining healthy and loving relationships. The need to control and manipulate others will disappear as I learn to trust those who are trustworthy. 8, I learned that it's possible to mend, to become more loving, intimate, and supportive. I have the choice of communicating with my family and friends and coworkers in a way which is safe for me and respectful of them. 9, I acknowledge that I am a unique and precious creation. 10, I no longer need to rely solely on others to provide my sense of worth. 11, I trust the guidance I receive from my higher power and come to believe in my own capabilities. And 12, I gradually experience serenity, strength, and spiritual growth in my daily life. So again, I just offer this for anybody who's curious, for anybody who might relate to any of those promises. A lot of the stuff that I talk about in my book comes from my experience in 12-step programs in general, but in particular, Codependence Anonymous. Very, very helpful for me at a time in my life when I really needed it. And so I will forever, I'm not actively participating in CODA these days, but I will be forever grateful to the people in that program. Some of them are still some of my best friends. And just want to put it out there for anybody who might be interested or curious to find out more. Now, for our quote of the day, I actually also reached into the Coda literature. And this is from the opening welcome that you would hear at a Coda meeting. No matter how traumatic your past or despairing your present may seem, there is hope for a new day in the program of Codependents Anonymous. No longer do you need to rely on others as a power greater than yourself. May you instead find here a new strength within to be that which God intended, precious and free. Now, again, I have to say, 23, 24 years ago, I did not see myself. I did not perceive myself. Who I thought I was not precious and free. I often made other people my higher power. I relied on them for my sense of value and worth. I was afraid to speak up for myself. I was addicted to people pleasing, to approval seeking, and I had no concept of boundaries, how to take care of myself in relationships. So I'm really grateful that Coda was there for me when I needed it and put me on that path. So if you're interested, it's coda.org. They also have local websites as well. And there are online meetings, face-to-face meetings, and all of that. So check it out. All right, so this is the portion of the meeting where we do introductions and victories. It's an opportunity for anybody who's new to introduce themselves, or for anybody to share a victory or celebration from the past week. So who would like to kick us off tonight? A celebration or victory or introduction?
Hey, Peter, I'll say hi.
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
Hey, yeah, I'm not gonna show my video because I'm in my favorite place. I'm doing this awesome self-care in my favorite place, doing my favorite thing, and having this wonderful training. So I just want to thank you for your dedication. It's clear we can only imagine the level, how much time and energy and effort it's taken you to produce this platform for us to have this fabulous, everybody should have it training. Or no, everybody I want to hang out with ought to have some, a common language like what we're learning here. And I'm so grateful. So I'm grateful for the people that come for regularly, the people who watch regularly, the people who are yet to join us. And I also have a program that I like to say saved my life. And so I also appreciate the programs. And what I recognize for me in my place, what I'm so clear about right now is I need what you offer, which is like the Reader's Digest version, like keep it simple, straight to the point. I don't have time for everybody's stories right now. I just need the juice and the mojo to do what's in front of me. And so for that, I'll be eternally grateful. And I can't wait to report next week and thereafter all of my wins past.
Awesome. Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you for your dedication and for your support. It's been wonderful. So I really appreciate you and look forward to our time together. So thank you. Cynthia, did you want to go?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Peter, thank you so much. My win this week was that I was interviewed for Vera Tarman's I'm Sweet Enough, Sugar Food Junkies podcast. And it's a really good podcast with Chrissy Kennedy and Molly Painshaw, and wonderful for information about food addiction and food issues. So I'm excited to have my interview be part of that. So that was a woohoo for this week. Thank you.
All right, great, Cynthia. So we'll give you a woohoo. Good job. Actually, if you send me the link, I'll include it in the recording so people can go directly there.
I will do that as soon as it's available to me. It may not be available for a little while, but I will.
Okay, great.
Thank
I know how that goes.
you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Barb, did you want to say hi?
You don't leave me. Hi, how are you?
Good.
No victories, no wins. I had a bad day. And, I sit there, but, I'm okay. But I had a bad day outside of it. It's again, it's so funny to say, it repeated in my head something like, you told me that this wasn't going to happen again. I'm kidding you. It's fine. It's her. She's not going to change. She's not, I work, I do a good job, and then I get boom. And so, like you said, I told myself the last time it's almost time to leave. I am fine with it. I am fine with the job. I am fine with leaving. I'm fine with staying. I don't have a problem. I don't. She does, and it's like, she had to write me this note, and whatever it is, you did this, you did that, but how she left it, and I'll leave it with you, and that's what I'm saying, just still makes me go crazy. She said, whatever I did. And then she said, well, we'll let it go this time. Or something like that. We'll let it go. You were wrong, and blah, 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 but we'll let it go this time. And I was like, ah! I didn't feel angry. I still feel that very hurt. Whatever the word is, it's like, I don't, okay, so it's over. She's got something, she's got screws loose, and whatever it is. I know you told me a while ago to leave. Like I said, this, it's funny. You mentioned God, and somebody the other day was in the rectory, and they said something about your boss, and I looked at him, and so I work for God. So you think this wouldn't happen to me? But what I did tell myself when it happened, I said, lesson learned. I'll learn from this, whatever it is. I don't know what lesson there is to learn in this. She's telling me I didn't do something. I can't, somebody's saying something to her. I'm not even, maybe this is what I got from you. I'm not going there. I'm not going to argue it. If you say I didn't do it, fine. It's so much easier. I used to be the confrontational, angry, crazy person. I still may be crazy, but I'm not like that. And it's like, I want to let it go, but I still did feel hurt. And I'm sick and tired of not having wins and woohoos and having this nonsense. So I think it'll always be as long as I work with her. Right.
So you work at a church, and somebody said God is your employer.
Boss.
Yeah. Boss. God is your boss.
Wasn't that funny? But he was saying good things about God. But I feel that way too. I mean, I am a service of that, and I love it.
Good. So well, let's just take 1 second. Something came to mind that I want to share with you. So, you ever heard of the concept of God's will?
Yes.
God's will.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about not my will, God's will.
God's will. Yeah.
We talk a lot about God's will in 12-step programs in particular, but I imagine in the church they talk about God's will too. And so let me tell you the two things that I believe to be true about God's will. Number one is, if it's happening, it must be God's will, because nothing can happen against the will of God.
Okay.
So whatever's happening in our lives at this moment must be God's will.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, how could something happen against the will of God? But number two is, if it's God's will, it must be loving. It must be for our highest good. There must be a gift in that experience for us. And
I agree with you. I agree with you today. And that's what I'm saying. So there's my woohoo, because I really do agree with you. It's, it's something for me to learn. I can learn it. I can look at her and, say, whatever. She's got her issues, her problem, whatever, I can turn it around. I understand the hurt, but it's minor. It's nothing. You talked about your explosions and stuff like that, or your feelings when it used to happen, and they're so much more milder, or and that I see. I really do believe everything I'm saying. I'm like, all right, lesson learned. That's it. Lesson learned. Whatever, and I'll find out what the lesson is. If it's for me to, because somebody walked into my, of course, into the rectory, and it was a deacon, and I was able to ask him a question, and I knew it was here for me. I'm like, oh, he walked into my life, so I can try to validate myself. Did I get validated? I don't know. I asked him if he also says what I'm supposed to say, and he goes, I can't remember. So, of course you're going to get that in a deacon or anybody that has any kind of spiritual power, and they're going to say, I don't know. We all make mistakes. We're human. God bless. Take it easy. Don't get yourself upset. And that was it. And he walked out.
All right. Sounds like good advice.
It was. Maybe I didn't get validated.
And again, Barb, I think the thing that I'm trying to look at in my own life is, the people, the people who are in my life are there for a reason. And the challenge is, I can either, get bent out of shape about it, or I could say, okay, there still must be something. I mean, 15 minutes ago, I was experiencing some annoyance.
Okay.
And I just said, you know what? This has been going on for years. And so this is an opportunity for me to not be annoyed.
Okay.
So it's like I decided what the lesson was for me.
Okay.
Maybe you want to decide what the lesson is for you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it is. I mean, before I would be angry, and I have told you my anger, I got rid of it. That little pit, that little feel hurt or feel sorry for yourself, it's minor. So, okay. Lesson learned. I'm getting better.
If the self-pity is minor at this point, then that's major.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So there's the lesson learned. Yeah. I can move on. Yeah. Where before I used to be paralyzed over this. I would be sitting still, paralyzed, not being able to move when something like this happened. I do admit it. And, I'm admitting it now. I don't think I ever really talked to anybody about it, but it used to be like that. And it's not like that anymore. And
that was that little kid who couldn't take care of herself. I used to have that paralyzed feeling. I understand that.
You do. Okay. It was horrible. And it's
so
not there anymore.
Now you see yourself differently. You see yourself as an adult. You're not a little kid anymore. You may not like what's happening, but it doesn't have to ruin, it doesn't have to define who you think you are. It doesn't have to define how you see yourself. It doesn't have to ruin your day.
Define your day. Right. It doesn't even have to define your day. I just went on. I saw the person walk into the place. I knew he was there for that reason. I nailed him. I tried to, I even told him, I'm trying to validate myself. So I said it to him, and, he just shrugged it off, because I believe him. He can't remember if he said it or not either. You know what I mean? And I'm being told I didn't say something I was supposed to say. And so I asked him, I said, well, do you say it? And he goes, I don't know. I can't remember. So, we could laugh about it.
So you may also want to devote a little bit of time each week to looking for another job, to looking for a new position.
I did say that, and I will, Peter. You will, and that will be my victory. The last fight, I'm going to go to the other people.
But my suggestion is just do a little bit each week.
I'm going to the bishop. I'm going to the reverend. I'm kidding you. Those are the people I know who will give me jobs. I will.
Yeah, because that's taking our power back. It's not being it's setting a boundary. It's not being in inappropriate situations with inappropriate people.
I know.
Sounds like this person has some issues.
She does. I know she does. I know.
But it's always our job to do whatever we need to do to take care of ourselves. And
Yes.
sometimes that means leaving a dysfunctional workplace.
Right. Well, just knowing that and the freedom of that. I think Dee Dee talked about that, the freedom of it, knowing that, oh, I know it just got punched, but I'm okay. I mean, that's wonderful. Okay, there's the victory.
All right, here you go, Barb. Woo-hoo!
Yep, got punched and I'm fine. Thanks.
All right, great. We got to move on. I got a lot to cover tonight. But we'll have time to talk later in the workshop if you want. You may want to apply some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight too at some point.
I'm sure. Okay, thanks, Peter.
All right, so let's jump in, guys, as we get a move on here. So we're reviewing chapter 7. We're starting our review of chapter 7. I hope you guys saw the email that went out. It's going to be at least this week and next week. There's no way I could do it all in one night. So we're going to work on chapter 7, forgiveness. We'll do the first part tonight, and then we'll go on from there. So, start out with a definition of forgiveness. To forgive is to stop feeling anger towards someone or something, to stop blaming, to give up resentment, to grant pardon or relief. Forgiveness encourages, even requires, letting go of anger, resentment, judgment, and attack. This is the price to be free of the ego, of our ego. Now, remember, we spent a lot of time last week and during the workshop talking about this thing called the ego. And what defines the ego, there's many different attributes, but it is this part of our personality, this part of our psyche that really thrives on judgment, attack, justified anger, feeling hurt, unfairly treated, offended, taking things personally, feeling like a victim, and then feeling justified in retaliation and revenge. So what I'm suggesting here tonight, as we talk through this review of forgiveness, is all of that's got to go. But the thing to remember is the ego, we're not bad people because we have an ego. It's actually part of the best I can tell, it's part of our evolution. Evolution as a species, it serves some purpose. And the best purpose that I could see is it served as a form of protection. It was a way to take care of ourselves. And so we rely on anger to protect ourselves. We rely on judgment to separate ourselves from other people so we don't have to get hurt. If we don't get close, they can't hurt us. It's also a way for us to let go of our insecurities when we judge others. So these are all kind of dysfunctional ways of taking care of ourselves. And that's kind of the role that the ego has played. I'm suggesting now that we have to let go of all of that, but we have to replace it with something. So we're going to start tonight. Actually, I think hopefully we'll get through it tonight. What we replace all of that stuff with is healthy boundaries. So we replace anger, resentment, judgment, control, victimization, justified anger, all of that with healthy boundaries. That's the primary way we take care of ourselves in our relationships. So we want to let go of the ego and all the stuff that goes along with it. And as I say here, forgiveness is a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. Now, that's not my definition. That actually came from a website I saw. I really agree with the first part. The last part, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness, I mean, as we'll find out in a minute, that's really not up to us to decide who deserves forgiveness and who doesn't, because we're not really doing forgiveness for anybody else. As I'm going to talk about in a minute, forgiveness is something we do for ourselves. And we deserve to be free of the resentment. We deserve to be free of the vengeance, of the anger, of the ruminating in our mind over what they did to us. We said previously that unconditional love means loving someone when we least like who they're being. Forgiveness means the same thing, with the added twist that the ones we're forgiving may have actually caused us or our families harm. So I mention all this because this is what we're up against. You know, this is, I've said in the workshop and I say in the book, you know, forgiveness is a radical way to live. We talk a lot about forgiveness. Most of our spiritual texts, you know, all the major religions talk about forgiveness. We hear stories of how the saints and the prophets forgave and all of that. And yet, you know, most of us have a really hard time applying this in our lives on a regular function, on a regular frequent basis. And so I'm kind of letting you guys know up front what we're up against. So as I say here, the first major obstacle to forgiveness for many people is that it seems to be something we're doing for someone else. The idea is we're letting another person or nation off the hook scot-free, and that the other person or nation doesn't have to be accountable for their part in things. That's not really the case. We can forgive somebody and still hold them accountable. We can forgive someone and still do whatever we need to do to take care of ourselves, to protect ourselves, to protect our rights, our family, and all of that. So forgiveness doesn't mean we're rolling over and letting people run roughshod over us. But the reason forgiveness is so important is because forgiveness is something that we do for ourselves. It's actually good for us. Forgiveness is about rewriting the story of what life did to us. This doesn't mean we're condoning someone else's unloving behavior. It also doesn't mean we're blaming ourselves for what happened or denying the pain that we might have felt, especially as kids. But it does mean that we make a new choice about how we see ourselves in the present by letting go of the past. So again, a big part of forgiveness is letting go, releasing. And it's my position, you know, that this is something that we do for ourselves. We want to be free of the resentment. We want to be free of the anger. We want to be free of all the negative emotions that go along with hating someone. Now, there's many reasons for this. So 9, being preoccupied with what another person did to us reinforces our victim mentality and can easily distract, excuse me, and can easily distract us from more productive thinking. Most people have no idea how much energy we consume on a daily basis being angry or annoyed with other people. Ruminating over someone else's bad behavior does nothing to them, but it can easily ruin our day. We may or may not choose to stay in the relationship with someone who harms us. But either way, letting go of our anger towards them frees up the energy that we can use to put to more productive use in our lives. So again, forgiveness is about freeing up our energy, freeing up our resources, freeing up our mental space to do something productive with our lives. You know, again, I think I shared this before. If I'm working on the book or, you know, whatever I got to do, whatever I got to accomplish, if I get distracted by what somebody else is doing or not doing, and I feel resentful, angry, and I start ruminating, how could they do this to me? How could they be so unkind? Don't they know who I am? They're so selfish. They're so inconsiderate. All of that is mental energy that I could be using to move my life forward. Now, again, I still take care of myself, and I will devote time to setting healthy boundaries, to letting people know if they're acting inappropriately. But I don't have to attack them. I don't have to make them wrong. I don't have to become a victim to stand up for myself. And I don't have to take energy that I need for productive use in my own life and devote that to somebody else's bad behavior. When I know who I am, when I see myself as someone who can take care of myself, when I believe I'm an adult and I know how to stand up for myself. Now, to the ego, forgiveness feels like we're giving up. By forgiving, in many cases, what we're gaining is peace. And this is no small thing. As long as we deal with conflict by using force, especially when that force is driven by anger, there can be no peace. We will live in constant fear of retaliation from the other side. The fact that we may have more or bigger weapons does not promise an end to conflict. At best, it buys time between attacks. Now, again, I'm not going to get into world politics or anything like that, but the analogy works either on a global scale or on an individual scale. And the choice for peace is not always an easy one to make until I recognize that it's the best choice for me. I still find ways to take care of myself. I still do whatever I need to do to make sure that I'm safe, that I'm protected, and all of that. But I don't have to react with vengeance. I don't have to become a victim. I don't have to lash out. I don't have to attack. And most of all, I don't have to feel self-pity. I don't have to feel sorry for myself. I don't have to become a little kid and all the stuff that I would normally do in terms of dealing with somebody else's unloving, unkind behavior. The thing that I say over and over again is that a big part of forgiveness is to stop taking things personally. And I have a whole section in chapter 6, I think it is, where I talk about even if somebody, this is actually it comes up in chapter 7, even if somebody is attacking me, it's still not personal. It's not about me, it's about them. They are so insecure in who they are that they feel they have to attack me to take care of themselves. What other people do is always about them. It's not about us. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's appropriate. Doesn't mean we have to, roll over and just take it. But it's not personal. We don't have to make it personal. We don't have to become offended. We don't have to feel slighted and use that as a justification for fighting back. The first step towards forgiveness and thus lasting peace is the understanding that all people, including those we consider enemies, do what they do because they think it's the right thing to do. We're all primarily motivated by self-preservation, i.e. survival, and/or the pursuit of happiness. The challenge/opportunity in these situations is to step into the shoes of our opponents and see the world the way they do. When we remember this, while we may not agree with what the other person is doing, we can at least begin to understand why they're doing it. This can lead to empathy rather than enmity for their choices. We may even attempt to assist them in reaching their goals in a way that doesn't harm us, since the more secure they feel, the better it is for both of us. So again, most of us, most of the time, are coming from that place of that question that I said in chapter 5, am I safe? Am I loved? And most of what we do is about self-preservation. It's about feeling more safe, feeling more secure. We do what we do because we think it's what we have to do to survive, to take care of ourselves, and/or to be happy in life. This is true of everybody. Even the people that we consider enemies. They're doing what they're doing because they think it's what they need to do to survive. So again, this doesn't mean we have to agree with their choices, but at least we can begin to understand the motivation. It also stops us from taking those actions personally, stops us from using the ego as a weapon, justified anger to retaliate or attack. And we may even say, wow, I understand how you feel. I understand why you're doing that. Now, it is having a negative consequence for me. It's having a negative effect on me. So I would like to help you find a different way to feel safe and secure. Now, that may or may not be appropriate. We don't want to step in harm's way. But at least we have an inkling that maybe this is not really about us. And maybe we can help them find a solution, and that's good for both of us. 13, it's probably, so in this regard, as I say in the book, it's probably a good idea to get to know anyone whose actions may unfavorably affect us, especially if we consider those people potential adversaries. We can actually get to know other people so well and have such clear lines of communication with them that we can diffuse potential problems before they happen. In fact, we can love other people or nations so much that it would never occur to those other people or nations to attack us over our differences. When we learn to do this, everything will change. Now, again, this does mean we got to put the ego aside. This does mean that when we're acting, let's say it's on the international, relations front, it does mean we have to act with somebody else's best interests in mind, in addition to our own. We can't just act from self-interest. We have to consider somebody else's, again, whether it's on the global stage or in our own family, we have to at least be willing to consider whether or not we're acting for or against somebody else's best interests. And I'll tell you, when we have other people's best interests in mind, and we show that we're trustworthy, and we act in a way that shows that that's really where we're coming from, those people would never think to attack us over our differences. So we can short circuit any problems by being loving, by being thoughtful, by being helpful, by considering somebody else's needs and finding out how we can help them, how we can be of service, instead of imposing our will on other people and expecting them to kind of roll over. And also recognizing that when other people do that to us, trying to impose their will on us, it's only because they're insecure. It's only because they're afraid. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it good. And it doesn't mean we have to roll over and just take it. But by beginning to understand that, we can address them in a whole different way and address their fears, their insecurities, their concerns in a way that doesn't invite conflict, but rather invites peace. So we're going to jump on. Now we're going to move on to boundaries. I spent a lot of time during the workshop talking about boundaries. Boundaries are dividing lines between things. In this case, they're dividing lines between ourselves and other people. You can visualize them as physical barriers such as fences, although I prefer to think of them more as rules or guidelines. Now, this is what's really important about boundaries. They're the primary, healthy boundaries are the primary way that we take care of ourselves and our relationships with others. When used properly, they can promote communication, reduce stress, foster intimacy, and avoid violent confrontations between people. Now, there are 5 types of boundaries that I mentioned in the book and that I've used in my own life. There's a lot of overlap between these 5 types, and there's no right or wrong when it comes to which type we use. I'm not going to have time to go into all of them in any kind of detail, but there are examples in chapter 7 in the book. So number 1 is physical boundaries. A physical boundary is any kind of a distance or dividing barrier or something like that between you and another person. So it could be, physical contact. You limit physical contact in some way. Whatever is going to separate you from another person in order for you to feel safe and comfortable in that situation. Number 2 is actually temporal or time boundaries are another form of physical boundaries, but I separate them out because I use time boundaries a lot. A time boundary is having a limit, for instance, on how much time I spend with somebody, whether it's on the phone, on Zoom, in person, some kind of a sense of how long I want to spend. Because I know for me that my time is valuable. I also know that other people's time is valuable. So I want to be respectful of them, but I also want to be respectful of myself. So having some kind of a temporal boundary, I found very helpful in my business relationships and in my personal relationships. Number 3 is verbal boundaries. This is basically what we're willing to accept in terms of communication, verbal communication from other people. For instance, I generally don't swear, use curse words in many situations with many people. I try to avoid that. I will also occasionally ask other people not to use profanity in my presence. Another one, verbal boundary for me, is gossip. So I basically have a no gossip policy where I just don't talk about other people. if they're not present. I actually don't really talk about other people, even if they are present, but that's a verbal boundary for me. Things like that. Number 4, mental boundaries. This is the idea that my mental, intellectual, perceptual space is sacred. It's my own. I don't have to explain, defend, or justify my choices to anybody if I choose not to. I don't have to accept somebody else's idea about who I am. I don't have to let other people's judgments define me. Those are all part of mental boundaries for me. I separate my mental perceptual processes from other people's. And then number 5 is emotional boundaries. And remember, the thing about boundaries is they protect us, but they also contain us. So for instance, I'm very conscious of my emotional state when I'm driving in my vehicle with other people. So I try to not react emotionally to what's happening on the road, what's happening around me. That's out of respect for them, and also to make sure that I'm safe when I'm driving with them. And then I also will remove myself from situations where there's a lot of screaming, a lot of anger, a lot of negative emotional energy, especially if it's directed my way. So it becomes a physical boundary in that I would remove myself from that situation. But the basis of it is this emotional, guarding my emotional sense of safety, my emotional sense of self. So it's my job to be conscious of that. And it's my job to have a healthy boundary in mind for what's acceptable to me and what's not. All right, so we're going to stop here. We're going to take a break, 5-minute break. If you're new here, I'm going to play a song. The song is Love My Life by Robbie Williams. If you're watching the replay on YouTube, I can't actually play the song because of copyright, but we'll be back in 5 minutes. The lyrics are going to be on screen, so you can sing along at home, and we'll be back. All right. So continue with our discussion of boundaries. The rule in terms of choosing a boundary is what's needed in order to see ourselves as safe and or comfortable in specific situations or with specific people. Boundaries primarily serve to protect us, but as Pia Melody points out, they can also serve to contain us. That is, they keep us from infringing on another's physical, temporal, emotional, verbal, or mental space. Many people think of boundaries as walls, rigid and impermeable. They can be depending on the situation, but for me, healthy boundaries are usually both flexible and permeable. So what does that mean? So flexible and permeable boundaries. So the idea of a boundary being flexible is, for instance, in the example I gave about having a temporal boundary about around how much time I spend on the phone with somebody. I can be flexible in that I may, if the conversation is going well, or if I feel like it's a good use of my time and it's serving me and it's serving them, I can extend the time for that call. It's not a rigid kind of thing. On the other hand, if the call is not going so well, I can curtail that call. And I've learned that for me, if the conversation is not working for me, I don't have to say, you know, gosh, you're a jerk, or you're this or you're that. I don't have to do anything other than to say, gee, you know, I've really enjoyed our time talking, but I've got to go. I've got something else I have to attend to right now. I hope to speak to you again soon. Thanks. It was great to connect. And then I get off the phone. I don't have to attack them. I don't have to make them wrong. And I make a mental note for the future that, you know, when I'm going to talk to so-and-so, it's going to be even less time probably, unless it's safe for me, unless it's comfortable, safe, and is serving me and is serving them. So that's flexible. Permeable is when we can let information flow in and out through our boundaries. So it's not, you know, it's not a complete wall. We can let information flow in. The example I give in the book is, it's a hypothetical example, but let's say you get called into your boss's office and the boss is telling you about a job opening in another division that might be of interest to you. But in the same conversation, he starts gossiping about a female coworker. So in that situation, we can let in the information that's helpful, that's pertinent, that's safe, but we don't have to accept the information that's not. And we can say something like, gee, thanks so much for the information on the job. I really appreciate that. I'll keep you posted. But, you know, I really don't feel comfortable talking about other people when they're not present. So I would prefer not to talk about so-and-so. And that's it. It doesn't have to be a big dramatic thing. You don't have to make them wrong. I don't have to go out and tell everybody that the boss was gossiping about a coworker or anything like that. So that for me is a permeable, flexible, permeable boundary. We let information in, but not all of it. We kind of assess the information. We take in what's reasonable, what's necessary, and we keep everything else out. We may also have a bottom line in terms of what's acceptable behavior in our interactions with others. A bottom line means that despite being flexible and open-minded, there are certain things that are just not okay. Now, again, the example I use in the book is we may have a bottom line in terms of our teenager living at home with us. We may have a bottom line about things like no alcohol use, no drug use, no smoking, vaping, whatever, while they're living at home. And while we want to be flexible and open-minded, there's a bottom line on that. So if it happens once, maybe we talk about it or whatever. If it happens again, you know, maybe at that point they have to find another place to live or whatever. There's some action that's taken. Bottom lines can be really difficult. My suggestion, as I talk about in the book, is have a plan ahead of time about how you're going to handle a situation like that. It's also helpful to communicate to the other person ahead of time what the consequences are of crossing a bottom line, so everybody's on board. In the second edition, as part of the addendum, I've included a sample family contract. So you can actually have a contract in your own family about, what's acceptable and what's not when people are living together. You see that on this side. So, there are different ways of handling it, but the idea is to get everybody's consensus ahead of time. Everybody's on board. Everybody understands the consequences. And, the thing that our boundaries do, we talk about this probably next week, but the big thing that the boundaries do, they protect us. This is how we take care of ourselves, but they also keep us out of resentment. And, Pia Mellody says resentment is victim anger. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says resentment is the #1 offender. And, resentment ruins relationships. Resentment causes heart disease. Resentment has all kinds of ramifications for us. 22, our boundaries should be consistent. This is really important, especially with children. Our relationships will run smoother if we're not randomly not enforcing the rules. It's okay to be flexible and even change our boundaries from time to time. But if we're constantly moving the goalposts, other people will lose interest in the game. So this is tough. My heart goes out to every parent out there. I can see how challenging it could be to consistently enforce our boundaries with our kids. But consistency is really important. It's good for our sake and for their sake. And this is true in all relationships. If you're an employer and you have employees, it's really important to have consistent rules, consistent guidelines that are consistently enforced. Continuing on here in the book, Pulling Your Own Strings, which was a recommended reading at one point in the workshop. The late Wayne Dyer says, we teach other people how it's okay to treat us. We let them know what's acceptable or not in terms of our relationship with them. Now, again, this is really, really important. And I actually give a very elaborate example in the book of how I trained when I was practicing law back in the day, I trained one of my clients how it was okay to treat me. And that included him being able to call me late at night at home. And, I recognized that I was the one who let him think that that was okay. And as it began to annoy me more and more, I realized, I had to set a boundary with this person. And so there's a whole discussion in chapter 7 about that. But the bottom line is, whoever we're in relationship with, we teach them how it's okay to treat us. So it's our responsibility to be very clear in our communications, to be very direct in what's working for us and what's not working for us. Without attacking them, without making them wrong, without creating conflict, but stating, what's acceptable in terms of their behavior, what's acceptable in terms of our behavior towards them, that kind of thing. 24, it's my opinion, based on my experience, that the closer we are to someone, the more we need healthy boundaries with them. Emotional enmeshment, such as minding other people's business, feeling overly responsible for their emotional well-being, having a history of rescuing, saving, and enabling them, can all make setting healthy boundaries difficult, if not impossible. So again, this is kind of counterintuitive, but for me at least, the closer I am to someone, the more I need to have healthy boundaries with them. The more I think I love someone, the more I need to have clearly defined guidelines in our relationship. And the more I do that, the better the relationship gets, the more opportunity there is for intimacy, the more opportunity there is for closeness. It's kind of counterintuitive, but the healthier my boundaries are, the closer I can get to somebody. And I had to learn that was true the hard way. Many years ago, when I first began exploring the ideas of having better boundaries with certain people in my life, I went out of my way to let them know what I considered okay and not okay in the relationship. I was often quite detailed and specific. The responses I got were as follows. Sometimes the other person was emphatic in their agreement, claiming they fully understood. At other times, they were less understanding and even a little bit skeptical. And in at least one case, the other person just kind of stared at me blankly, eventually wandering off, shaking their head in disbelief. Yet regardless of how explicit I was in stating my boundary, or how emphatic the other person was in their agreement, in every case, my boundaries were eventually transgressed or discarded entirely by the other person. So this is what I mean about learning things the hard way. So I'm going out of my way to set boundaries with other people in my relationships with them. And sometimes they agreed, say, yeah, that's a really good idea. Let's do it that way. Other times they're a little skeptical. And as I said, in one case, the guy just looked at me, stared at me blankly, and then just kind of wandered off shaking his head. But no matter how clear I was in my boundary with the other person, and no matter how emphatic they were in their agreement, in every instance, my boundaries were violated or transgressed. So, as you might imagine, that was a little frustrating and a little confusing. So what happened was one day I realized that these were all my rules, not the other person's. They had no investment in seeing things my way. Moreover, even if they said yes, once they figured out my way wasn't so good for them, the game was over. But it gets worse. I eventually saw that I was trying to use my boundaries to control somebody else's behavior. Because I was using a fancy word like boundaries, I thought it was okay. But trying to control another person is trying to control another person no matter what you call it. Thus, when the other person eventually caught on, they lost interest or worse. So then I thought, well, what the heck good is it to have boundaries if the other person isn't going to listen, and if I'm really just trying to control them anyway? What could possibly be the point? I'm actually going to, any of you guys want to answer that? What could be the point of having boundaries if the other people aren't going to listen, and if we're just trying to control them anyway? Barb, you want to jump in on that?
Because isn't the boundaries just about you and not the other person?
Ooh, woohoo! Good
Woo!
one.
Woo! Okay.
You get an A+.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I feel good. But I do remember you saying that.
All right. So here it is. So then it hit me. My boundaries are for me, not for the other person. They're not for other people. In the purest form, my boundaries set limits on my behaviors, not the other person's. They're guidelines that I establish for myself, what I'm willing to accept or not accept, regardless of how the other person sees them. This also means it's up to me to enforce my boundaries with me, not with another person. So guys, this was the biggest lesson that I had to learn about boundaries. You know, they are limits on my behavior. They're limits on what I will accept or not accept. And the way I enforce my boundaries is with me. So as I said earlier, if it's, for instance, if I'm in a situation where somebody is using profanity or, you know, is emotionally out of control, or maybe using drugs or alcohol or something like that, if my boundary is that I don't accept that behavior from another person, then it's up to me to either remove that person or remove myself from the situation. I may try to talk to them about it first. You know, I can take reasonable steps to negotiate, because that's the other thing. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but part of having healthy boundaries is learning how to negotiate, how to discuss things with other people and come to a conclusion that works for both people. But if I have a bottom line, for instance, about, you know, drug use or alcohol when somebody's driving a car, for instance, there's no negotiating on that. if that's a bottom line for me, and it is. But in certain situations, I may be willing to negotiate. But eventually, if the situation is not changing, and if I'm not safe, if I'm not comfortable in that situation, it's my job to enforce my boundary, which means most likely removing myself from that situation. Or there's some other action that I have to take. The example that I give in the book is when I realized that, so this client was calling me late at night at home. I had a conversation with him. I asked him not to call me after 7 o'clock at night. He said, fine, I understand. And 2 weeks later, he calls at 9 o'clock and says, I know I'm not supposed to call after 7, but this is really important. Turns out it was not at all important. He did it again a couple weeks later, and then he did it again. And I finally realized, if I don't want to talk to this guy after 7 o'clock at night, it's my job to get off the phone. It's not up to him to not call me. That's trying to control his behavior. And so the next time he did that, it's all in the book, I set a boundary, and I said, Stan, I said, you know, I've had this conversation, and I was very nice about it. I wasn't attacking him. I didn't make him wrong, but I did state my position. I stated my case, and that was, Stan, I really appreciate having you as a client. I value our time together, but I've tried to let you know that I want to have a personal life. So that means I've asked you not to call after 7 o'clock. And I said, I actually said this, I don't know where it came from. I said, if this is an emergency, call 911. I said, otherwise, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Please call me tomorrow during my normal business hours. And it was very scary for me. This guy was responsible for 90% of my income at that point. And he was a really nice guy too. I mean, he wasn't like a jerk. He was a really nice guy. But I had been doing all this emotional caretaking with him, and I had put myself in this position. But it was terrifying, and I could feel my heart pounding. And I thought, you know, in that moment, I thought I might die when I stood up for myself. And the only thing that happened was he said, okay, I'll give you a call tomorrow. Have a good night. And he hung up. And he never called again after 7. So it was only when I enforced my boundary and I was ready to just hang up the phone, I was ready to just, you know, end the call. That's when things changed in that relationship, and for me in general. So I got very clearly that it's up to me to enforce my boundaries with me, not with other people. All right, so we're going to stop there for tonight. So this is an opportunity. We'll do some Q&A, or if you guys want to chime in on any of these, and then we'll pick up the rest of chapter 7 next week. So anybody want to share about any of that? Ask a question? Talk about your own experience with boundaries, your ideas about forgiveness,
Hey,
a lot of the
Peter.
stuff that we've talked about.
Hey, everybody, it's Dee Dee. I cried, and I feel it in my heart, and I so understand how resentments can cause heart disease. The feeling of a broken heart for a long time is very, very wearing, and I can relate. It's like, diamonds are made under pressure. Thank God I've had all the experiences I've had that allow me to do the work that I do, which requires an amazing amount of steadfastness, tenacity. I'll use the word, ego death to the best of my ability, and love. So I had an experience like you did with your client, your 90% paid for client, my 100% paid for client. This in the last 10 days, not once, but twice. And because of this work and this training and all of my previous, survival learnings, I was able to keep friends and survive what could have been, somewhat disastrous, but turned out good. So I can't wait for next week's training, because I'm the kind of person because I've got some some resentments, or no, I've got some, I don't know if it's anger, but I've got some stories that are so egregious, I can't even think about what words I might put towards the forgiveness process with that other person. It has to be all an inside job, which I'm happy to do. And it would be nice if I didn't go through my life, attracting people who are fearful and then creating schisms or losing relationships or losing people because I can't go to the forgiveness place fast enough. So I really want to learn forgiveness on time, not like tomorrow, the next day, or a year or week or 3 years or 6 years. I want to do forgiveness, on time, which is now for me. So I'm learning, and I really appreciate your leadership. Thanks, Pass.
Thank you, Dee Dee. That's great. Very well said. And, the thing that I want to say for me was when I stood up for myself, that was me seeing myself differently. But I will say this too, a lot of the fear, the anxiety was I still hadn't progressed to that place where I saw myself as being able to take care of myself. I had to walk through that fear by taking that action. And so walking through that fear was instrumental in changing how I saw myself, changing how I valued myself, how I valued my time. And again, I was very respectful of him. I didn't attack him and make him wrong because it wasn't his fault. What I was feeling was about me, and I had not set healthy boundaries prior to that. I was expecting him to be different so I could feel better. That is insanity in my experience. And so it was only when I changed who I thought I was, how I saw myself. And remember, the thoughts lead to the emotions lead to the words and actions, and the words and actions lead to the outcome. So when I took that action of setting that boundary, standing up for myself, being willing to hang up that phone, that was instrumental in me changing how I saw myself. It was a reflection of that. So that opened up a lot of doors for me. And I still have my share of challenges and relationships, but more and more, it's like I take my power back and I do it. That took me to set that boundary with him was probably like almost a year, maybe 6 months, 8 months, a year. Now I can do it in 20 minutes. So I spare myself a lot of heartache. The other thing I was going to say about resentment, there's a quote from the Buddha. It's in chapter 7. You probably heard it before. Resentment is like drinking poison and then expecting the other person to die. So, we hurt ourselves to show other people how much they hurt us. That's the insanity of the ego. We will hurt ourselves to prove to somebody else how much they've hurt us. That's insane. All right, great. Didi, you want to say anything else?
I'll just say right on.
All right. Right on. Woohoo. Cynthia, did you want to go?
Sure. I really enjoyed hearing all of this today. And I particularly enjoyed hearing the Codependence Anonymous promises this earlier at the beginning. And I thank you for that again. So these boundaries are boundaries for me. Forgiveness is forgiveness that I need to give myself. And it really doesn't have a lot to do with others. It's really a very different perspective. And I'm very grateful to you for all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, we're gonna talk more about this next week, but forgiveness is something we do by ourselves, for ourselves. It doesn't, in many cases, it's unwise to involve the other person. So it's really something it's a gift that we give to ourselves, to let go of the anger, the resentment, and all of that is a gift. It's an act of self-love. But it only works if we know how to take care of ourselves, because if we forgive somebody before we know how to take care of ourselves, we may just be setting ourselves up for more harm. So that's why the boundary work is so important. That's why understanding how all of that works, because otherwise, it's just going to potentially, we're just getting in front of that train again. And most of my life, I stood in front of the train and said, "No, train, stop. No, do it my way." And then I would get hit by the train, and I would wonder why I kept getting hit by the train. And then one day I realized, oh, if I'm tired of getting hit by the train, it's up to me to get off the tracks. So then I step off to the side of the tracks and I just wave as the train goes by, and I feel the cool breeze in my hair as the train goes by. So that's, my boundaries are for me. It's not for other people. I'm not trying to stop the train anymore. I'm just getting out of the way. Great. Thank you, Cynthia. Anybody else? Barb, you want to say something?
I don't think so. I know what I have to do, but no, it's good to reinforce the boundaries. It is. And the boundaries within yourself. You do get the concept at first, you think boundaries, okay, I put my hand up and you're not going to bother me. You're not going to do this. And so it really did reinforce. I can go there tomorrow and feel kind of like, I will, the boundaries are within me. The forgiveness is within me. It has nothing to do with her.
Yeah, a good boundary, a good mental boundary or emotional boundary. A good mental or emotional boundary for a situation like that is, what other people think of me is none of my business.
Right. And I'm not going to even see her. She loves to leave notes and all that kind of stuff. So I don't even see her. So I just have to, I don't know what the word is. I've been doing it. I can go tomorrow and do my job. Before it used to bog me down. It does a little bit, but it doesn't have to anymore. I don't know if that's a boundary or not.
Well, I think the big lesson, it sounds like for me, for you in this situation, and something that I work on all the time, is to not let other people's choices and decisions, actions, behaviors affect me.
Yeah, I know. That's a big thing.
Yep. Because that's giving my power away. When I get upset over what somebody else does, I'm giving my power away because I have no control over that.
Right. And what chapter was that? I'm just saying.
You can start chapter 2 and chapter 3. We talk about taking responsibility and
but it's not giving my power away. I gotta reinforce that. Okay.
Again, it doesn't mean what they're doing is right. It doesn't mean we're condoning their bad behavior, but we don't have to react like a victim. We don't have to feel, I don't have to feel bad about myself because somebody else has an opinion that, they're pulling out of their hat, and it's usually, we talked in chapter 6, we talked about projection. They're usually projecting onto me all the stuff they don't like about themselves. Now, again, I may want to be open to feedback if I'm an employee and there's something I need to adjust in the way I do my job. This is having permeable boundaries. So permeable boundaries is we let information in that's helpful, that's appropriate, but we keep out all the other stuff. So when it gets personal, when it's an attack, we don't have to let any of that in. That's healthy mental, emotional boundaries. And then if there's specific feedback about what I need to do my job better, I can take that in and make an adjustment.
Got it. That's perfectly said. Thank you.
Now, it does take a lot of the fun out of life, because
yes. Yes, it does.
I don't, we get that emotional. I talk about this in chapter 6, I think, or maybe chapter 7. We get a hit off the drama. We become addicted. There's a physiological reaction in our body to feeling slighted, to feeling offended, to having to defend ourselves, the anger, the justified anger, the defensiveness, the indignation. How could you do this to me? It's like a drug. We get all this adrenaline and cortisol and all these other neurotransmitters, and it's like, and so when we stop reacting like that, when we stop interacting with other people like that, it could actually create a problem because the body craves that. It's like any other addiction. There's a craving for feeling bad, for feeling victimized. You know, if I've been doing that for 40 or 50 years, which in many cases I have, I've trained my body to expect that hit of you know, self-pity, of indignation. It becomes like a drug. So, you know, I have to be content with my life becoming very boring. Now, I can replace it with a healthy sense of excitement, a healthy sense of joy, as opposed to the dysfunctional emotional drama that I'm used to. So I'm a little tongue in cheek with that. But, you know, one of the ways that I've measured my recovery, especially in Codependence Anonymous, was how much drama I had in my life. And you know, I'm happy to say that, you know, I have a lot less drama than I used to. And when I do have drama now, I can find my way out of it quicker. All right, good, Barb. You want to say anything else?
No, no. Very well said. Thank you.
All right, good. Anybody else want to say anything? Michelle, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think I agree. It's with you, basically not taking things personally, and what other people think of you is none of my business, and not letting it eat and fester and repeat itself in your head over and over, right? It's like,
Really? Yeah.
unless I can like confront them about a situation, it's like I can't let it go.
It takes practice.
Yeah.
You know, it takes practice. And a lot of it too, for me, has been learning how to not put myself in a situation where I could be, you know, where I could be subjected to somebody else's bad behavior. You know, learning how to have those boundaries so I don't put myself in those situations anymore. But it takes work and it's not easy, you know, and especially if we're close to somebody, if we have a long history with somebody in our family or whatever, it'd be really challenging. But, you know, for me, I can see the difference now, and I can see how important it is to let what other people say and do be about them, to not take it personally, like you said, to not let it fester and eat away at me, because they don't really have any power over me anyway, unless I give them that power.
I guess it's changing your mindset, but like you say, like when you're used to thinking a certain way or acting a certain way, it's hard to get out of it. Right? I mean, it
will take effort. I've been working on this stuff every day for years, so it will take some effort. But what's the alternative? The alternative is to continue on in those relationships, in those situations, to feel victimized, to feel resentment. You know, it's my belief that a lot of our health conditions, medical conditions, physical illness, and all that in the body is directly related to trapped emotions. You know, trapped anger, resentment, frustration, you know, feeling like a victim, self-pity. For me, at least, I believe that a lot of that becomes a catalyst and it expresses itself physically in our bodies.
Yeah, somebody I knew used to tell me, Michelle, just let it go. Let it go. So every once in a while, I try to remember that person saying it, and I'm like, okay, just got to let it go.
Yeah, we got to let it go. And it's so much easier when we know how to take care of ourselves. So I don't put myself in those situations anymore because other people don't always act appropriately. Other people can act abusively, unlovingly. That's the reality. And we don't have to stick around for that. You know, but it's my job to figure out how to take care of myself in those situations, to not put myself in those situations. A primary boundary, like the primary boundary, is the word no. And as they say in Codependence Anonymous and other 12-step programs, no is a complete sentence. I don't have to say anything after that. I could say no, and that's it. Okay. So learning how to say no to certain people in certain situations has changed my life, because I would say yes and then do something I really didn't want to do and then feel resentful of them, like somehow it was their fault.
Yeah. Okay.
We're going to talk about resentment next week.
Okay.
But that's the result of it. So until I am willing to take care of myself and willing to do whatever I need to do to be safe, to be comfortable, it's hard to just let it go. Because just letting it go means I could put myself back in harm's way the next day and then wonder what the hell happened.
Mhm.
So it's not just letting it go. I mean, ultimately it is letting it go, but we have to make sure that we're in a position to actually do that where it's safe and healthy for us to do that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
All right, great. Thanks, Michelle. All right, anybody else? All right, we'll play the song one more time and then we'll come back for our final goodbyes. All right, guys, so that's it for this week. We will be able to finish up Chapter 7, the review of Chapter 7 next week. And then I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, I know we're dragging this out a little bit, but I was thinking if you guys want to, the week after, if you want to do like a 1-hour AMA, Ask Me Anything, if you guys have questions, whatever, I wouldn't be presenting any formal presentation of material or anything like that, but if it would be helpful to wrap everything up for you guys, bring some questions, bring some challenges that you're currently facing or whatever, we could do something like that. I'll leave it up to you guys. If you want to let me know next week whether or not that's interesting to you guys, we can do that, and then we would be officially done. But I thought that might be a better way to kind of wrap things up, but I'll leave it up to you guys. So anybody want to say anything before we close?
Hey, Peter. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. What a wonderful workshop. Did you send Robbie Williams a copy of the book yet? I can't wait till he's endorsing you enthusiastically and gives you the rights to his wonderful song. That's a great song. Good choice.
Thank you. It's actually, he didn't write the song. He just performed it. So the songwriters, I have their name somewhere. And they're represented by Warner Music. So I'd actually have to go through Warner Music I thought about it. And because when I actually do my live workshops in Madison Square Garden or one of those big arenas, I want to have the rights to use the song. So
exactly.
I'm working on it. So it'll work. I think it would be a great song to do with 15,000 people in the audience all singing along. So thanks, Dee Dee. Anybody else?
I told you I have this vision that maybe me, Dee Dee, Cynthia, Michelle will get out on stage and dance to it and sing it. How about that?
You can do that right now, Barb.
I know, I do it all the time, and I'm sure everybody else does too. And so they want to do it on stage. Good night.
All right, good. Well, we'll find the right venue. We'll find the right venue for that.
All right, we just need somebody to choreograph it.
All right. Well, all right.
Good night.
I don't know about the choreography, but we'll find somebody to help with that. All right, great. Cynthia, you good? Michelle, you good?
Good, thank you.
All right, great. All right, guys. So remember, be bigger than you think you are today and every day. Have a great week. I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Peter.